Welcome to Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategy. I am your host, James Mackey, and I'm very excited about today's episode. We're going to be taking a different approach to the show and introducing a new format. Traditionally, we have done an interview format where we will bring on guests such as CEOs of talent acquisition solutions or chief people officers or VPs of talent acquisitions. And it's a lot of fun. We get to learn a lot from these folks and dive into talent strategy and get pretty technical when it comes to data, process, and technology. So the idea behind this new format is we're getting a group of folks together from the team here at SecureVision, all of which we're all, at least we'd like to think so, talent acquisition experts. And we're going to be sharing our opinions on a lot of the most topical things as it pertains to the economy, the employment market, as well as talent acquisition and people functions. So the goal with this is to provide you some insights on what's happening in the news, what's current, and what matters, as along with more possibly topical trends. And the other goal behind this new format is to honestly have a type of show on our podcast that is maybe a little less technical, requires a little less critical thinking. Sometimes it's really nice to dive deep and get into, process and technology and how to implement an ATS. Other times you want something that's a little bit more casual and entertaining. And so the goal of this is to just break up the flow of the podcast and provide value to you in a different way. So that's the idea behind the show. I want to make a couple of quick introductions. Today we have with us Julia Arpag. Julia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, James. I'm so happy to be here. Hi, everyone.
What's going on? And so Julia is a talent team lead here at SecureVision, and she's going to be able to share a ton of amazing insights with you. And she's just a lot of fun to speak with and work with. So I'm really happy that she joined us today. And we also have Andreea Florescu on the show. Andreea, what's up?
Hello, excited to be here. And hi, everyone.
Andreea is a total rock star. So she's been with the company now for, I think, over 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's nuts.
A few months. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. We're gonna have to do something super fun for that.
The 6th anniversary, yes.
Hell yeah. And so Andreea is our VP of operations, but she's also held roles as director of talent acquisition for growth stage technology company, a SaaS company, and she's worked in several functions throughout the business. And she's essentially my right hand here at SecureVision, and is implementing most of our process optimizations for us and our client playbooks. So yeah, this is going to be a really fun conversation. So anyways, today we wanted to talk about layoffs, big tech, and we wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with Twitter and Elon Musk and his people management strategy. Where do you guys want to get started? I mean, do we want to start with Twitter? Do we want to start with layoffs and tech? What are you thinking?
Well, I think if we talk about all of it under kind of the people leadership umbrella, I think we'll touch on both. So
cool.
I'll just say, first of all, for me personally, this is Julia. Hi, everyone. I recruit, I work in talent acquisition because I care about people. That is my motivator. So it is so hard for me to watch all the layoffs happening. And the one redeeming factor for me is when they're done with compassion and when they're done individually and people first. So I'll just be honest, it is killing my spirit to watch what's happening at Twitter. I'll be honest, I'm a fake millennial. I'm not on social media except for LinkedIn. So I don't personally engage with Twitter, but just hearing about what's happening, hearing about how the people internally are being treated, have been treated, people having to wonder online, when am I getting my severance? What is going on? Just all of this tumultuousness. And then obviously financially, Tesla stock plummeting, Twitter stock plummeting, Elon losing billions. Obviously, he still has billions, so I think he's okay. But all that being said, it's just been crazy to watch that whole world be in free fall. And for me, from a people perspective, that's where I'm the most, mad, to be honest, just in a place of frustration on behalf of those employees and honestly, Twitter users who are what is going on? Why has this become a platform of appropriate hate speech that's okay now? So that's what's killing me about this.
I couldn't have said it better. So Andreea, what are your thoughts on Twitter to add to what Julia said? I think we're probably all in agreement and what she just mentioned, but what else are you thinking and seeing out there?
Yeah, so with Twitter, you never really know where to start, to be honest. But I would say let's look at where we're at right now. Twitter is not in a good position. Users are reporting more and more bugs, and it is natural when you lay off 75% of your workforce. I think that is the saddest part for me personally, because I feel like for him, sometimes things are just memes, and he knows how to exploit the internet. He knows how to exploit tweets. He's done that to raise his stocks before and to do some other stuff in the market. But it's so sad when something like this happens and it really impacts people, like real people, right? No matter what games he was trying to play or whatever was on his mind. In a way, it also feels like he wanted to make Twitter better, or at least that's what he's saying, but he was saying all of these things from a user perspective, right? From using Twitter, but you haven't seen the intricacies internally what Twitter is. You didn't even look at the code, and you're making these assumptions of how you would make Twitter better. So I think that's what kills me personally with this aspect, that I feel like it started for him as oh, I'll be the savior of this thing, I'll save free speech. As you very correctly pointed out, Julia, as well, in his attempt to save free speech, he brought more hate speech to the platform. So yeah, I feel it's like a free fall, right? So we'll see where it lands. But again, people are affected, and that's the worst part of it.
Okay, so just to make sure that I have the stats right, he laid off around 75% of the staff, and that was pretty much initially when he took over, right?
It was
Pretty
staggered,
quickly.
actually.
It was staggered?
Yeah, so I think it was about 50%, and I'll check my stats and we'll leave some links for like accuracy. But I think it was roughly 50% of the staff immediately once he took over, and then staggered over the next couple of months until he got to roughly 75, I think.
Well, also though, didn't a bunch of people left, right? Was that part of it? I
Yeah.
mean, do you guys know like what percentage of staff just bounced once he laid off a bunch of people? I think it was a fair amount.
I haven't been able to find the percentage because I think it's still happening. Like I think once he gave the ultimatum where he was like, listen, this is gonna be like excuse my language, but balls to the wall, like don't sleep, don't eat, just code all the time kind of environment. He gave people the option. If you like that, great, stay here. If you don't like that, go. And I think it's been kind of a slow trickle out. So I don't think there is a stat, at least not one that I've been able to find, of how many people have actually stayed versus left.
Yeah,
I
none
have
that
seen
I-
accounts from insiders at Twitter who are like, it's basically an open secret that everyone who's still here is here exclusively for the paycheck and are actively looking for other jobs. So it sounds like the sentiment internally at Twitter is like, no one's bought in. They're just there essentially for the money and planning to leave as soon as they can.
Or even worse than that in many ways. A lot of the people, from what I found online, that have remained, they're on an HB1 visa or one of the visas, so they actually need a place to work, right? So they are the ones that are suffering the most in my eyes, along with the people that were laid off, of course. But they are the ones that have to kind of go through the brunt of it and face everything that's happening to them right now until they find a new job or another option, and they're not made to leave the US. So that's a big part of it as well.
I mean, James, I'm curious, like you're a leader, obviously not of Twitter, but of SecureVision. So thank you for your service here at SecureVision. So from a leadership perspective, like what are your thoughts on kind of watching what Elon's doing and kind of watching the way leaders of big tech are handling this moment in the marketplace in general?
What really caught the world by surprise in the Twitter situation was the speed at which he came in and made these cuts. And I think it's a lot of people have heard, at least heard before, or know that to be a good leader, you need to be decisive. And sometimes you have to be willing to make uncomfortable decisions. But there's context to that. And so when you're coming into a new environment as a leader, it's very important to first understand why things are being done the way they are. And even if you feel like you know why, or even if you do know why, it's still very important to check assumptions at the door and to talk with leadership and get in there with managers as well and have a lot of conversations to understand why things are being done the way they are. One, you might learn something and realize you didn't have all the answers. Or two, even if it checks out that, hey, I was right, or the leader's right, it's still going to allow for more rapport to be built in place for people to feel heard and for you to be able to influence the situation more. Because leading a tech company isn't just about product roadmap. It's also being a leader, a CEO is a people motion. Like you have to be able to work with the folks that are building and driving that product roadmap and the development of the company. So I think what's odd about it is that maybe and I don't know, I can't get it set, but like I could see a leader going into a new environment and be like, I'm going to show them what's up. I'm going to show what good leadership is. It's decisive. It's making hard decisions. It's acting quickly. Right. And then coming in there and doing that and, maybe a little too aggressively, right. And a little too fast. And now you're dealing with the fallout from that, which it's hard to correct course after something like that. I have made that mistake. Definitely coming into a new organization before, where you just think, I'm smart enough to know exactly what we need to do. This is fucked up. This is fucked up. I know exactly. Now I did it with 100% company. So, much different, not a publicly traded org.
Scale.
a little smaller scale. But I think it's just important to, from a leader perspective, it's you have to listen to the folks that are working blood, sweat, and tears day in and day out. You have to get their buy-in, even if you're going to make significant cuts. You need to, one, those folks are going to go other places. You should be worried about their perception of you to some extent. It's not going to change how you move forward, but you should still treat people with that type of respect. But equally so, you're really also doing it for the people that stay, because the people that stay are going to look at how you treat the people that leave.
That definitely impacts ethos of the company. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Right. Like if you have a nice outplacement service, right, where you're providing good severances and benefits for job seeking and resume writing and everything that goes into finding your next role, and the employees that stay see that, then they are going to feel more committed to you as a leader, saying, hey, this is a difficult time. We are doing what we have to do to move forward as a business, and also respect. Like, you're doing this the right way. We understand this is a high performing team. And also we care about the folks that we've worked with. So I don't know. I feel like it was definitely tone deaf, and it was definitely like, I think it comes across as very arrogant to make an assumption that you know exactly what to do when you haven't really spoken to anybody at the company. Yeah.
Which, in all fairness, I don't think Elon Musk tries to hide that he is arrogant. Like, I think he's been pretty upfront about that. He had this one quote that I read in an article where he was like, I reinvented the way we make electric cars, and I'm sending people to Mars. Like, did you think I'd be a normal, regular kind of guy? Like, he literally said that in an interview. So in all fairness, he's like, yeah, I break shit and don't really care about it. So, but I hear what you're saying. And obviously I am thrilled I work for your leadership and not that style of leadership. So I
think he should also say, when stating that he invented the electric car, to say that he bought Tesla after it was actually invented. That's an aspect that's super important. Plus, we've learned a lot of things about how he's been running his companies, what he's actually like invented or created himself and stuff like that. But returning a bit to what you were saying, James, earlier, with his decision to slash like immediately, of course, people are the most important aspect of a business. Like, that is my firm belief. So for them to have this happen is something horrible. But then if you ask me, it's also from a business sense, because you probably know, but after he laid off 50% of the workforce, he then realized by speaking with the rest of the team that, hey, we don't have enough people to actually do the stuff that we want to do and implement the new features. So then they actually went back to some of the people they laid off and ask them to come back again. So it's also a miscalculation, if you ask me, from the standpoint of really assessing the situation, what you were saying, James, learning about that business, that company that you know nothing about, only the perspective of a person that tweets. So not only from a people perspective, but business perspective. And I think this is something that also endangers, as you very well said, the people who remain, not only from their perspective on the leadership, but also the future of the company, which is a huge thing.
Right. Like in a tagline, just very simply put, you develop outplacement services and severances, not only for the people that are leaving, but the people that are staying.
Yeah.
And I think that's just totally missed by so many leaders.
And
Yeah.
if you're a B2C company, I think that speaks volumes to your users. Like I remember back in 2020 when Airbnb had to do a ton of layoffs, they did it so well and that they were in the news for how well they did it. And it made me as like an Airbnb customer be even more excited about using their platform because I was like, wow, like not only is your product awesome, but your leadership is awesome. Like the way you treat your people is awesome.
Right. And that's what's so weird about this miscalculation in a sense is coming in and making assumptions and jumping the gun is something that a lot of junior operators, leaderships, like junior VPs and C-levels make.
Mhm.
In fact, like, again, like from that, I didn't make all these different types of mistakes, but one mistake I made was making assumptions and trying to, and I think I was right actually, but I didn't get the buy-in from the team. And so it created a lot of friction and it was actually hard to like ever come back from that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so I think it's just, senior operators usually get this right.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You would hope. I mean, hopefully you've been through this several times, and so yeah, it's just a little weird. It's a little weird that there was just such a huge miscalculation. I mean, I guess he just didn't. He wasn't able to see the potential fallout from it.
Or he didn't
And he was
care, to be honest.
that for sure, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. But I think, of course, he was cost cutting. I mean, he
Mhm.
put the company in huge debt. They were in debt even before this acquisition. Now they're
Yeah.
in even more debt. So of course, yeah, it's a cost cutting thing, but it doesn't really justify it. And speaking of that, and I think we could pivot into big tech in general, cost cutting, I have found a useful stat, was among the top reasons for layoffs in the last year. So the top reason for these layoffs were cost cuts across all companies in tech. And at a certain point, you need to wonder, I think. I mean, yes, it's an economic crisis. There's a war in Ukraine. There's a lot of things happening. But I find myself wondering, like, how much of this is just a feedback loop? And I'm curious about your thoughts too. Like, just the market and the stock market, it's math, but it's also based on emotion, on what you feel the future will bring, right? So if all of these CEOs are looking left and right and seeing the other CEOs cost cut and do layoffs, I feel like it does have a ripple effect, independent of the actual economic conditions, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're tied at the hip. But that's what's so difficult about economics is that it's all backed by belief in a system.
Exactly.
And so it's so that is 100% true. The issue is that you can't just keep your head up in the clouds and say all of these people are making these decisions based on emotion or looking at other people, because regardless of why those decisions to make cuts are being made, the reality is that you can't really fight the current too much. If everybody else is cutting back and cutting down costs, then if you just maintain a certain level of spend that isn't sustainable, then it's like, that's it's actually, it can be difficult is because, we have this mindset of just go, 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 growth at all costs, right? And it can be difficult when you see everyone else around you like slowing down and you want to be like, no, come on, guys, let's go. Like, what are we doing? Pick it up.
Yeah.
But then it's just like, it's really when the current is so strong, sometimes you just got to go along with it. And that's another part of being an experienced operator. The flip side of that is, and we'll get back to the layoff parts, but like, I think it's also, hopefully you have a type of leader that's thinking to themselves, there's opportunity here, right? There's always, like in any market condition, there's opportunity. And is there some opportunity we could take advantage of now to drive growth? Or at a minimum, what opportunity there is to optimize our operations and basically build the engine better so that when we enter the next growth market, we're able to accelerate growth and go to the next level. So
for sure.
Is that what you see as the opportunity in this market condition? Like kind of take a moment, recalibrate, figure out your operational engine, and then be ready to grow when the market gets better?
I think that the ideal situation is if you're in the type of business or you have the right creativity and resources to benefit from a contraction, you can literally become better, right? I mean, like the companies, one of our at SecureVision, one of our bigger clients was SimilarWeb, right? Digital transformation, data. They had their best year ever in 2020. So there was some companies that in that year took off,
Mhm.
right? It accelerated a push. And so now some of those, like, they didn't anticipate COVID and they fortunately had a product that was well positioned. But that's where it's like when you can come in, like the best leaders and strategists can have I suppose, a vision for the future and anticipate what the future is going to look like and build a product that, okay, we can estimate 5 to 10 years from now, a much larger percentage of companies or whatever, they can understand some type of trend. And if you could create something where, okay, in a down market could even accelerate that trend, that's pretty fucking cool. And so, when you look at our business as embedded recruiting, it feels to me, and I don't know, I always wonder, like, am I missing something? And I don't know, maybe I am, but it feels like we're sort of tied to the hip with the market. So it's just like the greater S&P up market, we're going to grow, then we're going to dip in a recovery, but we're going to grow more the next time. And we kind of follow that trend line. I think a lot of companies are more so in that position, but ideally it's how do you grow and profit while in a correction, which can be difficult for some companies. Some SaaS companies are pulling it off though.
Yeah. And how, as a big company, I would add, how can you take all the necessary precautions and see what you can cut before you cut team members and people, right? See what other things you can cut down on. Maybe it's marketing budgets, not people, once again, just ads or whatever that is, something from an analysis that's being made of, hey, what else can we do before we get to our people, right? And to really make an effort to maintain as many as possible, which many of them, I assume they have done. So hopefully that is the case.
Well, that's really tough. The one thing is that payroll is typically the biggest expense within a company. The second thing is you have to be very careful cutting down on demand side budget, because that could become even more self-fulfilling where your demand pipeline shrinks even more. And then the company's in a worse financial situation. So I think like you're right though. Like there's ways, like maybe you cut down on experimentation channels. Like, okay, we're trying all of these different, like some of these marketing strategies that aren't generating the most, the highest percentage channels of closed run revenue deals. So we're going to cut out those and really dial into what works and be 10 times better at that.
Yeah. And
I
you're
think
right. Just to be clear, that's exactly what I meant. Like, I'm not saying just slash everything else and kill the company, because in the long run, it's not going to help anyone. But yeah, look, if there is something where you can actually cut down on some costs before you get to people.
For sure.
What I would love to see is, I hate like the companies who do these mass layoffs and then still have so many jobs posted, because I'm like, I get that, like training. So I'm a recruiter, right? Training a recruiter to suddenly become a software engineer, that would take me a very long time and I'd probably destroy your company. So like, please do not hire me to be your software engineer. But that being said, there's other skills. Like I worked in marketing before I went into recruitment, right? Like let's say we don't have room to continue talent acquisition, but we do have room to grow marketing. Like I just think there's so many opportunities for companies. And there are so many soft skills that are so transferable to other teams and other roles. I mean, think about it. It takes a long time, typically, especially in this market that's suddenly flooded, and it's so hard to differentiate who you actually want to bring onto your team. It could take less time or the same amount of time to recruit someone new as it would to train someone on your team to be able to fill a role that you need versus the role they're currently in that you would need to lay off. So that's an opportunity I think that a lot of companies probably are taking. Like I'm sure some companies are doing that, but unfortunately there are a lot who it seems like aren't. Like with the Salesforce layoffs, they have hundreds of jobs posted on their website. I'm like, y'all, could one person maybe have done one of those jobs? Maybe, I don't know. Is that a crazy idea?
One person in the Ohana could have done that.
Yes. I'm like, are y'all trailblazers or no? So I would just love to see that be a cultural shift. I think there's so much opportunity there.
So much structure in talent management systems has to be built in though to even make that work, because think about an enterprise organization. First off, you need to be able to uncover which roles somebody could have an appropriate ramp time to provide a high level of value in that new position. And then from there has to be a lot of process documentation for onboarding and training there likely needs to be a whole learning and development team. And then there needs to be a way to manage employees internally and make sure that they're applying to applicable jobs. And of course, companies like Salesforce, Meta
Mhm.
have these resources, I'm assuming. I'm wondering how well organized they are,
Mhm.
because to me, it's like that whole infrastructure being built in where you can effectively do that. And in an up market, is that really their priority? Or is their priority in an up market revenue growth,
Mhm.
responsibility to shareholders? So it's like, I wonder where, like, how much of when we don't see that happening, I wonder how much of that comes from talent management systems not necessarily being a priority within the organization. And so they're almost forced, okay, a down market hits. They don't necessarily have the time to build up that infrastructure. So it's more so just cutting and rebuilding.
Mhm.
I look, this is literally just my assumption based on trying to put on that, top down hat on what's happening.
Mhm.
What do
About
you
why
think?
they don't do that, if that would be like an obvious.
Yeah, like, why aren't they doing it, right? Like,
Or
why
they're
aren't they
not
doing
doing
it?
it
What?
more, at least. I'm sure that some are doing it. I think I've
Sure.
heard of Accenture doing that from a friend of mine. They have like
Mhm.
a department that is really focused on finding other positions and other departments for people whose projects may be close out for whatever reason. So there are companies doing that, but you're right. Why aren't there more? And I think you're right, James. It could be that it's just not a priority. I mean, it's not easy, as you very well put it. You have to create this whole talent management system. But at the same time, like, I have these naive, maybe, but I have these expectations, especially from them as big companies, to really pave the way for that, set an example for other companies, and really switch to that being the norm, as opposed to only this focus on the bottom line, which I know is important. But still, I would love to see a mix there, I think.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look up articles right now to just see, like, for instance, how much Salesforce is actually doing this. Because of course, I'm sure all of these
Mhm.
companies are attempting to plug
Mhm.
people in appropriate roles. But I
Mhm.
would love to find some statistics on that and how effectively they've been able to do it.
Mhm. Well, the only company that I've seen actually announce, "Hey, this is something that we're doing," is Zapier, which is a very small tech company. Like, they're not Salesforce,
Mhm.
Amazon. So I feel like that would be something they would shout from the rooftops. Like, if Amazon was like, "Hey, great news! Like, we laid off 18,000, but we saved 4,000 people's jobs by pivoting them into these positions." I feel like we'd hear about that because they want to offset. They're a BDC company, so they want to offset the bad press of all these layoffs. For me, their Amazon customer who's like, "Oh my gosh, you treat people like crap. I'm gonna start buying things." Gosh, I don't know, from a store. I don't know where you go if you don't use Amazon. But anyway, I think that can be part of it too, like the positive press of that. So I think we'd hear about it more if it was happening more.
See, I agree with you. I feel like there would be more out there. Like, I'm looking right now and there's really nothing.
Right. Well, and Andrea, to your point, like where you were like, I wish they thought about things besides just the bottom line, like getting that's important. I guess my
Mhm.
argument is I think this is better for the bottom line. Like I think it makes sense. Yes, James, you're right. You have to have the infrastructure. So to build
Mhm.
the infrastructure from the ground up and then reskill your employees, I agree. That's not cost effective. But if you're a big tech company, God, I hope you have an L&D team. Like, God, I hope you have a really strong people team. And I feel like that is something that if you're building that in your up market, just positions you so well for if you have to use it in the future. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think there are some situations though in which, like, you're just gonna have to bring in, if they're putting an emphasis on a different part of the business, and there are some roles that, they're very skilled positions that,
mhm.
right? I mean, I get it. Like, it's not always going to be possible, but yeah,
Exactly.
I think there is definitely a gap there. And it's interesting because we do talk about people being the most important. And aspect of a business. And I think to a large extent that's true. I think to some extent as people leaders, I think we could be a little bit biased. And I think it's really two things. People are incredibly important. Alongside that, a proprietary value proposition that's baked into proprietary technology is also incredibly important.
Mhm.
And so it's those two things alongside that, right? And obviously people have to build that tech, but both of those things go into creating a technology company that's providing exponential value. You can have the best people in the world, but if you don't have a proprietary value proposition or a proprietary technology, people talk about proprietary technology all the time, which only matters if the technology is actually something people want.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
but you need both of those pieces in order to build a successful company. So
Mhm.
I think that that's also kind of like the balancing act that these companies try to achieve. It's like, okay, we could continue to invest in these people, systems, and infrastructure, but we're also, a big part of our thought process is going into product roadmap and the value that we're creating for customers and how we're positioning in the market alongside competitors, and our acquisition strategy and how we're going to continue to innovate on the product side. And so it's like that constant balance between proprietary value proposition and technology and building a world-class people organization.
Mhm.
I think that that's probably like, another huge challenge is to get both of those things right.
Yeah.
Makes it a lot more, difficult. Because again, like you can have incredible people, but if you don't have like the right product
In
market fit, it's not going to really.
mind, in a way, they're tied together, because mind, as you said, like that proprietary technology, it's being built by someone, right? So it's in my head, it all revolves and goes back to people. They're creating that immense value. Without them, you can't really do a ton of things. And that's why I feel like as a company, you need to be really careful and really treat everyone as best as you can. Be very mindful about these things. Don't just say, oh, it's fine, we'll just announce everything in an email or a Zoom meeting, or not pay severance or other things like that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that I think a lot of those employees who do have a bad taste in their mouth from the way layoffs happen, or even if they happened kindly, I mean, you are still laid off and you do still need to go
True.
find a new company and a new job. So
True.
we are seeing this interesting trend where, as big tech is kind of shrinking, at least for right now, a contraction like you called it, James. We're seeing insane, like I see articles every single day about how healthcare, like the healthcare industry is like, please come work here. Like not only the medical roles, like the doctors, the nurses, but they need software engineers to work in the medical field too. They need program managers, like all of those roles. So I think if people are willing to kind of broaden their scope and say, okay, yeah, I came from Meta, but I don't need to stay in this space. Like maybe I moved to healthcare, maybe I moved to finance, maybe I moved to business operations. I think there is a lot of opportunity for those, now I guess I'm talking on more of an individual level, like the people impacted by these layoffs, but I think there's huge opportunity there.
Yeah, true. And you can still work in tech, like be a software developer, engineer, but work in other industries, because I've seen the same things as well. A lot of positions in healthcare, as you said, biotech is a huge field right now, manufacturing. I'm reading here from an article, finance, professional services. So there are areas in the market that are still hiring. So that is the good news. And to your point, Julia, yes, I think reskilling, and if someone is willing and able to pivot to other industries right now, there is an opportunity there.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And also though, there still are a ton of job openings in tech.
True.
So, recruiters are probably getting hit the hardest.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes.
Software engineers, salespeople, companies are still hiring.
Mhm.
So I don't, when you're looking at the news and all you see is layoffs, it could be scary. However, there are still a lot of great companies hiring in and outside of tech. The economy is actually still in a pretty stable position. So from the CEOs that I'm interacting with, I recently got back from a CEO summit. I was with around 80 tech CEOs. And a lot of people are thinking, now nobody has all the answers and nobody knows for sure, but a lot of them are thinking we're going to end up stabilizing Q1, Q2, and we're going to start to grow again slowly, coming back Q3, Q4. So based on what I'm seeing in our own demand funnel at SecureVision, we are definitely seeing an uptick in deals closed won over the past couple of weeks. We have closed a fair amount of revenue over the past couple of weeks, and that is, we already hit the revenue number, I think, of Q3 and we're only on January 19th.
Right. We're like,
Andrea,
2
thanks
weeks
for pulling that report, by the way.
You are welcome.
I saw that shit. I was
Many
like,
more to come.
damn. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, oh, I can breathe again.
DevOps for the win. Go, Andrea.
Yeah, hell yeah. I like those reports. I like those reports as long as the numbers look good.
Mhm. So this
Exactly.
report
Thank
specifically,
Yeah,
you.
is
this
the one that you like.
specifically with this data. So
I like
Andrea,
this
if you can,
report from today.
right, just like, do more of this, please, more of these numbers.
Make them look good. Yes,
Right.
yes. Noted.
Right. But yeah, so like we are definitely seeing an uptick. And so it's too soon to say, but when we do this podcast again with the three of us next time, I'll be able to report back a little bit more on how I think the state of the economy is, because from our perspective as an embedded recruiting firm, we're usually an indicator of the market direction. We get cut before the market starts to decline, or as the market starts to decline, and we usually are brought back before the greater market starts to get brought back. So hopefully what we are seeing is we've stabilized, and we're starting that growth pattern, which means other companies are going to see it 3 to 6 months from now, or the overall market will. But this could also just be temporary, right? Because companies did annual planning. There's hires they have to get across in Q1. We typically see an uptick in Q1. So it's hard to say yet, but I will say, just being that recruiting is an indicator of the greater market, we're seeing a lot more movement, a lot more decisiveness, more hiring than we were seeing in Q3 and Q4. So
yeah, that's great news. And something really positive to, as we're approaching the end probably of our chat today, to leave it on a super positive note, right? Things seem to be moving, right? We don't know what's going to happen yet, but it seems like things are moving, and hopefully they will in a good direction sooner rather than later.
I love it. I love it. Well, Julia, Andrea, this is a blast. I know already this is going to be popular. People are going to love listening to this. Why wouldn't they? But
we're a good time.
It's us. Shit, come on. No, but like really it is. And this is just fun for us. So I think selfishly we should just keep doing this.
Yes,
personally.
I love it. Honestly, yes, I'm on board.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're just like recording our conversation. So I'm here for it.
Yeah. Okay, what else? Okay, so if you're not already, everybody tuning in, you should be following Julia and Andrea on LinkedIn. So Julia, where can people find you on LinkedIn?
You know what's amazing is I have a really unique last name. So you can just find me at Julia Arpag. Like, I'm the only Julia Arpag on LinkedIn that I've been able to find. That's my whole LinkedIn handle, LinkedIn/Julia Arpag. Easy.
Dope. All right, so that's going to be in the description. And Andrea, how about you?
For me, it's Andreea Florescu, and we'll have that link in the description so you'll know how it's written, and you'll be able to click on it directly, and you can find me anytime there.
All right. Well, thank you. And for everybody that's tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. If you're getting value out of these podcasts, we'd really appreciate if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We're currently #1 in the country. We want to continue to grow and continue to add more value to more people. So we really appreciate your support there. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.